Let's bow for prayer. We don't come tonight to handle your word. We come that your word might handle us and shape us and speak to us and mold us. We would yield to you in every way. All of our blind spots, all of the places that are rough, that need to be smoothed out, every adjustment you need to make in our lives. We bow at your feet, dear Jesus. Whatever you do tonight, don't leave us alone. Whatever happens in this hour, bother us. Speak to us. Direct us. Reveal yourself to us. For our supreme, absolute desire is that all that's going on in you might go on in us, because you are literally in us. We welcome that in this hour. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Keep reminding you about the setting of this powerful passage, of course, and the setting is given to us out of chapter 9. Jesus has finished his Galilean ministry, has come up to the end of that ministry, and has been strangely moved as he has seen the multitudes. He has been moved with compassion. He's been burdened about the multitudes. He sees them as sheep without a shepherd. He sees them scattered and weary. He sees them under great burdens. He can hardly stand that. He calls on his disciples to have a great prayer meeting, and that prayer meeting is given to you at the very end of chapter 9, which is verse 37 and 38. He is calling them to pray and focus on one single thing, which may be what prayer is all about. Prayer is for others. Wouldn't it be interesting if all your prayers were strictly for others? If you never prayed for anything but something for others? If you were so lost in the vision of Christ that your vision was his vision was your vision, and it was always about others. And his prayer for that he wanted the disciples to get in on was, the harvest truly is plentiful, the laborers are few, he says. Therefore pray the Lord of the harvest that he would send out laborers into his harvest. Of course, as they are praying, Jesus jumps up in the middle of their prayer and says, whoa, your prayers are answered, I'm sending you. So they are becoming the answer to their own prayers, which is phenomenal. And so you'll note in chapter 10, verse 1, he calls his 12 disciples to himself, and the whole focus, of course, is on his 12 disciples. And then in verse 2, they have now become apostles because he has sent them. So they've moved from disciples to apostles. Well, what happened in the meantime from the discipleship idea to the apostle idea? What took place? Well, it's the last part of chapter 10, verse 1. He gave them power over unclean spirits to cast them out and to heal all kinds of sickness and all kinds of diseases. So Jesus reached down inside of himself, grabbed a hold of something of the power he contained within, transferred it to his disciples, gave them this power to go out in ministry, and now they are the sent ones. They have become apostles. So here are 12 apostles. Now you'll note in verse 5 a very significant aspect of this whole thing, that he is talking exclusively to the 12 disciples, that is the 12 apostles. These 12 Jesus sent out and commanded them. All the rest of this is a discourse then given by Jesus. He's giving them instructions, obviously, on the ministry that they are to have. Now, as we got into that ministry, we noticed down in verse 16, since some of you were not involved in this, I want to bring you kind of up to date. You'll note down in verse 16, we've been working on an outline. In the first part of verse 16, we begin to note that he gives them a picture of what ministry is all about. Then he moves into the end of verse 16 and gives them the practice of what ministry is all about. And then he moves in to be very, very clear about persecution. And the emphasis is not, will you be persecuted, or you might be persecuted. Well, I just want to warn you, be careful. This could happen. No, he says, this will happen. You will be persecuted. If you're ministering, you're going to be persecuted. If you're not being persecuted, you're probably not ministering. So persecution is a given in the ministry scene. So he gives this persecution emphasis, but then he immediately gives provision for that persecution. Then he moves right back into persecution. Then he moves right back into a provision for that persecution. And then he comes to the passage that we are dealing with tonight, which is the portrait of ministry. He wants to give us a portrait of ministry. Now you say you're just playing on words, because back in the beginning of verse 16, you said this was the picture of ministry. So the first part of verse 16, he gives the picture of ministry. Now he's giving us the portrait of ministry. Well, what's the difference? Well, you'll note in chapter 10, verse 16, the picture of ministry is like a snapshot. It's like standing back with a camera and taking a picture. He's using imagery, if you please. And the imagery of ministry that he gives to them is as sheep in the midst of wolves. That's the picture. And of course, all of the discussion of persecution is about that imagery. And again, we've discussed this so much that whole picture of sheep in the midst of wolves is a turn-off, it's a discouragement, it's a downer, it's a negative. I mean, who says, oh, that's for me? I mean, you aren't raising your hand. So I'm not sure that that's very appealing to us. Sheep in the midst of wolves. He says, I want to give you a picture of what your ministry is going to be like if you're really going to minister. You are going to be as a sheep, not sent to wolves, not look out, there might be some wolves around, not guard yourself, not go out as Superman, not go out as a superhero, not go out as the strong one with the sword to take care of the wolves. I want you to go out as a sheep in the midst of wolves. He, the good shepherd, is distinctly, directly sending us into the midst of wolves. You're going to get bit. Interesting. Now, that's the picture. It's imagery. And of course, it's the imagery that's used for him as well. Because you remember that he is the Lamb of God. So he is the sheep as well. So we are becoming what he is, which moves us into our passage. Look at this, verse 24 and 25. A disciple is not above his teacher, nor a servant above his master. Oh, I love this. It is enough for a disciple that he be like his teacher, and a servant like his master. If they have called the master of the house Beelzebub, how much more will they call those of his own household? Let's read it again. A disciple is not above his teacher, nor a servant above his master. It is enough. Isn't that a great statement? It is enough for a disciple that he be like his teacher, and a servant like his master. If they have called the master of the house Beelzebub, how much more will they call those of his household? Now, I want to propose to you, he's giving you a portrait of ministry. A portrait, of course, is when a guy, an artist, looks at a person and begins to draw the picture. See, the other was a camera, imagery, trying to describe. Jesus is taking the brush in this case, and he's painting the picture of your face. And guess what your face looks like? Woo! It looks like Jesus. He's painting his face on you. The whole deal is you are to become the visible image of the God who is invisible, which is exactly what he was. He was the visible face, the portrait of our God. Now he says, I want to fill you with what I've been filled with, and I'm sending you out to be what? Oh, the same portrait, so that you'll have the shape of the nose, the look of the eye, you'll have the shape of the chin. It'll all be that you will look like God. And weren't you made in his image to start with? Portrait of ministry. There's two major issues that immediately you run into if you saturate in this passage. I mean, it just becomes so obvious. If you just spend time just saturating, you don't have to even be a student to get this. It just leaps out at you. It's just all over the passage. One of the things one of the issues, there is a language shift. There's no question about that. You can see it readily. See, all the way through, he's been addressing the 12 disciples, and he's been using what is called the second person. In fact, he's been using the pronoun you in the English language, you. Now he's going to shift. There's a shift in the language. For instance, if you back up to verse 5, you'll note that he's taught it is directly again to the 12 disciples. These 12 Jesus sent out and commanded. He's talking to the 12, nobody else, just the 12. And he uses language as that. For instance, look at verse 7. And as you go, talking to who? The 12, obviously. As you go, preach. Look at verse 8. Heal the sick, cleanse the lepers, raise the dead, cast out demons freely. You, who? The 12, obviously. You have received, freely give. Freely, you have received, freely give. Look at verse 9. Provide neither gold nor silver nor copy in your money belt. Obviously talking about the 12 disciples, the 12 apostles. Nor bag for your journey, nor 2 tunics, nor sandals, nor staffs, for a worker is worthy of his food. Now whatever town or city you enter, inquire who it is that is worthy, and stay there until you go out. And when you, see, all the language, all the way through is this you, I'm talking to you 12 disciples, I'm addressing you, this is about you. It's really strong. Now when he comes to verse 24, he drops all of that. In fact, if you look at verse 23, he ends up with this second person stuff. When they persecute you in this city, flee to another, for assuredly I say to you, you will not have gone through the cities of Israel before the Son of Man comes. Now the whole language shifts. It shifts into what is called the indefinite third person. See, he begins to talk in terms of a disciple. Why didn't he say you? Talking to the 12, that's what he's been doing. Why didn't he say, you are not above your teacher, and you are not above your master? See, he didn't do that. He shifted language on us, which takes us, the significance of that is, it takes us into a larger perspective. He says, I want to broaden this out. This is not just about the 12 disciples. This is not see, you can't come to this passage and say, well, that was for them, it's not for me. No, in this passage, he is speaking directly to you. You are in the picture in this passage. The wonder of this truth applies distinctly and directly to you. You can't say, well, I'm not one of the 12, so this is not my deal. Yes, he's broadened this to embrace you as well. Very significant. A second thing that's very significant if you saturate in this passage is not only the shift in language, but is the structure of the passage itself. It becomes very obvious what he's doing. In verse 24, he gives the negative. Do you see it? The negative. A disciple is not above his teacher, nor a servant above his master. It's the negative approach of the whole thing. And nobody likes the negative, but he quickly shifts into the positive in verse 25. It is enough for a disciple that he be like his teacher and a servant like his master. Then he moves us right into the consequences. So in verse 24, he gives the negative. In verse 25, he gives the positive. First part of 25, he gives the positive. Then he moves us into the next part of verse 25 and into verse 26 and gives us the consequences of that. And isn't it interesting? He brings us right back into persecution. You feel like going up to Jesus and say, you got a martyrdom complex or something? Like he's really stuck on, oh, hurt me. We're so stuck on, don't hurt me. We're so stuck on joy, peace, happiness. Whoa, I feel good. We're so, solve my problems. He's stuck on, oh, hurt me. Let me bear the burden of a world. Come on, I want to take this on. It's really interesting. And he moves us right back into persecution and the consequences. If they called the master of the house Beelzebub, which was all about the persecution of the Pharisees, if you go back into those passages where they did that, if they did that to me, how much more you think the way if they crucified me, what do you think they're gonna do to you? And one of the things that's just absolutely infuriating and upsetting about the person of Jesus is he never gripes. And I'm a perpetual griper. Just really is convicting. I hate it. I want to deal with verse 24 and 25 with you. I want to propose to you three basic principles that spill out of this passage that apply to your life, to my life. One is be surrendered to Jesus. Oh, you say that's nothing new. I know. But it's interesting to me that in verse 24, where this spills out of, a disciple is not above his teacher, nor a servant above his master. That Jesus is not quoting the scripture of the Old Testament. Jesus is not quoting theology. Jesus is not saying, well, this is a doctrinal study. He's not saying, well, this was in the manual of the Church of the Nazarene. He's not saying, well, this comes out of the Proverbs and came because of the inspiration of God. He's not saying that. He's giving in this verse what is called an axiom. And I didn't know what that thing was, so I looked it up in the dictionary. It's a self-evident principle. Or if you don't like that, the dictionary says it's a principle that is accepted as true without proof as a basis of argument. In other words, it's just common sense. Nobody needs to prove this. This doesn't have to be in the theology books. You don't have to be a brilliant person to figure this. This is not a philosophical thing. This is not, whoa, that's deep. No, no, no. Jesus says, I'm not going to theology. I'm not going to doctrine. I'm not going to the manual. I'm not going to the depth of philosophy to give you this truth. I'm going to that which, if you got a brain at all, if you have any logic, if you have any common sense about you, you know that what I'm saying to you is true. And what is true? Well, a disciple is not greater than his teacher. A slave is not greater than his master. Come on, you know that. Now, the disciple deal is really interesting because the disciple, literally a disciple, and we've discussed this before, but a disciple has two aspects. The two aspects of a disciple that come together make up a disciple. You say two aspects, that's right. Well, what if I only have one of those aspects? Then you're not a disciple. Well, I'd be half a disciple. No, you wouldn't, because it takes both of these operating together to make you a disciple. So a disciple, you can't be half a disciple. You're either a disciple or you're not a disciple, and there's two aspects to being a disciple, and those two aspects have to both be present, interlocking, interworking with each other in order for you to be a disciple. Example of that would be water, hydrogen, oxygen. Hey, it's only when they come together that you got water. You can't say, well, I'm breathing half water. No, you're breathing oxygen. It takes both of them intermixed together to make liquid. Disciple, two items. You getting this? Disciple, two items. Can't be half a disciple. Well, I got one of them. No, you don't. You may have one of them, but you aren't a disciple. I don't know what you are, but you aren't a disciple. It takes both of these operating together to make the disciple. What are these two aspects? Number one, believer. You got to believe. Well, I believe. Now, I'm not talking doctrine. Well, you got to believe. I'm not talking theology. Well, I've never been to Bible college, so I don't know what I believe. No, we're not talking that. We're talking about Jesus. If you're going to be a disciple, hey, this is the self-evident principle. The self-evident principle is that the disciple is not greater than his teacher. Well, who's the teacher? Well, Jesus. We're attaching ourselves to the person of Jesus. Well, why would you want to attach yourself to Jesus? Because I believe in him. If you're not sure about him, then you're not a disciple. If you're not sure he's the one you want to listen to, then you don't want to mess with this. If you're not sure, well, yeah, I believe that. Well, I think he had a lot of good truths, but I'm not sure that he was really the Son of God. Well, then, good night. He was a liar. Hello? Well, he was just a good prophet. Well, that's stupid, because how could he be a good prophet when he would stand up there and tell us lies about his contact with the Father? He either is who he says he is or he isn't. And you either buy in or you don't buy in. Hello? So if I'm a disciple, a believer, oh, yes, I'm going to give myself to, I'm going to come under the control of, he is greater than I am. I believe what he has to say. I believe who he is. I believe that. Well, what does believe mean? Depend. Rest. Commit. Come under the influence of. If he's going to be my teacher and I'm going to believe what he tells me, and he says, if he says up is down, I'm going to say, whoa, really? Okay. Why? Because I believe in him. What if he tells me something that isn't true? Never. 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 Can I depend on everything? Yes, yes, yes. What if he tells me hard things? Bite into it. Sometimes you need surgery. It's the only way to be well. You don't like everything the doctor tells you, and you believe every word he says. You better go get a second opinion. Not on this. See, belief in Jesus coming, hey, I'm a disciple. He's my teacher. I'm going to come under his influence and believe, count on, depend on. We give this definition of faith that you can't remember. Oh, I'm trying to teach you this definition so that every time you hear the word faith or believe, you just automatically think of this definition. Faith is invoking the activity of the second party. Faith is invoking the activity of the second party. Faith is invoking the activity of the second party. Faith is invoking the activity of the second party. Faith is invoking the activity of the second party. What did I say? Faith is invoking the activity of the second party. That's right, that's faith. What's invoking? Calling on, crying out. Hey! You stick your head out the back door, yell at the kids, get over here! That's invoking. So I'm sticking my head out the back door and say, hey, Jesus! And I'm invoking. The activity. What's the activity? The kid is running across the backyard, exerting his muscle. He's on the move. I'm invoking the activity. Come on, Jesus, move on this. Hey, put some energy into this. Come on, Jesus. I'm invoking. I'm calling upon. I'm asking for. I want the movement of. I'm asking. I'm invoking the activity, the movement of the second party. Who's the second party? Jesus is. Well, then, if he's the second party, who's the first party? I'm always the first party. Yeah. I mean, I'm so full of myself, I think I'm the first party, right? And all my life, what have I done? Invoke the activity of the first party. If you want it done, do it yourself, son. Hey, yeah, nobody can do it as good as I can. Step aside, I'll handle this. Hey, I move in, I take care. It's my life, bless God. I'll handle. Well, let's look at your track record. No, not yours. Let's look at my track record. This is embarrassing. I know. Let's not look at my track record. Because I've been invoking my energy, I'm tired. I've been invoking my wisdom, I ended up looking stupid. I've been invoking my ability, I ended up saying, well, I don't have any. I've been invoking my talents, I've come to the conclusion, I don't have any talents. I've been invoking what I can do. I've been invoking my financial wisdom. Man, am I broke. I've been invoking. Now I'm saying, Well, what is that? If I've been invoking my activity, then what have I been? I haven't been a disciple. I've been the teacher. Yeah, I've been the teacher. Now, he says, I'm going to be a disciple who comes and surrenders under the domination, under the control of, I'm going to believe in the teacher, Jesus the teacher. I'm going to invoke his activity instead of mine. Oh. Can you imagine having the energy of God instead of your own? Oh. Can you imagine having the wisdom of the Father instead of your stupidity? Well, this is the way I've always done it. Woo! Wouldn't it be something to operate out of, this is the way he's always done it? And he's got a track record and a half. Well, this is the way I've always won the battles. Yeah, you go back to how he's always won the battles. Look at the Old Testament, man. He thinks and it's done. I'm going to come under the authority, I'm going to surrender. I'm going to believe I'm the disciple. He's the teacher. I'm invoking the activity of the second party. That's the first element. Well, you say, I believe, but I don't have the second element. Then you're not a disciple. The devil believes and trembles. And do we say, oh, he's half Christian? No. We do not, folks. We do not. We do not. He's not half Christian. Why? Because one of these doesn't make it. See? Are we tracking? So he's a believer, but he's not a disciple, because this takes both of these together. Now, the other element is, not only am I a believer invoking the activity of the second party, I'm the disciple coming under the control of, influence of, move in my behalf. I'm not going to act, you're going to act. I'm depending on you, move through me. The second element is a learner. Well, sure. If he's the teacher, I'm the disciple. What am I going to do? Learn, which is all about seeking and open. And I didn't learn much in school. You know why? Well, frankly, I knew more than the teachers did. That's why I didn't learn much. I went out of the class saying, those stupid teachers, they don't know what they're talking about. Obviously, I didn't learn much from those teachers. If you're going to learn, if you're going to be a disciple of the teacher, you have to recognize, he's got something to teach me. I'm open. I'm seeking. I'm on the edge of my seat. I told you the story about Plato and this guy that wanted to learn philosophy. It's a great story. Guy wanted to learn philosophy, and so he came to Plato, banged on his door one morning and said, listen, I want you to be my tutor. I want you to be my teacher. I want to learn philosophy. I want to know what you know. And Plato said, if you really mean that, come back tomorrow morning. I want to see you at 7 o'clock at this door. He said, I'll be here. So the next morning, about 6:45, he was standing there, shivering in the cold. Plato, at 7 o'clock sharp, walked out the door. Guy who wanted to be a student fell in behind. They walked down the pathway. All the time they're going down the pathway, the student was thinking, he's going to teach me something great. I don't want to miss it. I want to be alert. I got to pay attention. I got to get this. I want to be in on this. And he's following Plato. And then they walk down through the city streets. And I got to pay attention. Don't want to get distracted. I got to learn this. He's going to come in just any moment. I'm going to get some great truth. And they walked all morning out into the countryside. I got to stick with this. I want to get the truth. What is the great truth? What's he going to teach me? Don't want to miss it. Got to stay alert. And he's just pressing right on the coattails of a great philosopher. He's going to give me the first great lesson. And they came finally. in the late afternoon, came to a large body of water, a lake, and Plato walked into the water, man, and the guy comes right after him, the student comes right after him, he's right on his coattails. Oh, he's going to teach, it's going to come anytime. I got to get this lesson, don't want to miss it, don't get distracted, stick with it, you're going to get the first great lesson. And he follows him into the water. Hey, they're up to their knees. Oh, I've got to get this lesson. They're up to their waist. Oh, I got to get this lesson. They're up to their shoulders, up to their armpits, their shoulders. Oh, I got to get this lesson. What's going to be the great lesson? All of a sudden, Plato turns around, grabs the guy by the head, yanks him under the water, and holds him there. He's gasping for breath. He's thinking all the time, oh, I got to hang tight. What's the great lesson? He's going to teach me a great lesson. I must not miss it. I must not miss it. Finally, Plato, he couldn't hold his breath anymore, and the student just began to shake and struggle, and Plato grabbed him and yanked him out of the water. And the student looked at him, gasping for breath, and when he could catch enough breath to speak, he said, Plato, what was the great lesson? Plato looked him right in the eye and said, listen, when you want to know truth as bad as if you want to know truth as bad as your lungs wanted air, you can come back tomorrow. Seeker. How hungry are you? How open are you? I got to know. How desperate are you to know truth? How bad do you want? How I am the truth. So this is all about him. If you're casual, not a disciple. If you're, maybe not. No, you're not a disciple. If you don't hunger, if you're not seeking, if you're not open, if you're not believer, seeker. If you're satisfied with what you know, then be who you are. Have a big day. But you're not a disciple. A disciple is one who says, I have a teacher, and I believe in everything he says, and I'm listening, and listen, I want to know truth. I'm seeking as bad as my lungs want air. That's how bad, that's how passionate, that's how, I'm after him. Disciple is not above his teacher. Slave is not above his master. You know, of course, what Jesus is talking about. A disciple is beneath the knowledge and wisdom of his master. A slave is beneath the status, the social status, economic status. He doesn't measure up to his master. I am surrendered under the influence. He starts with that. Let me give you the second principle. First principle, be surrendered to Jesus, a disciple under his teacher. Second one is the first part of verse 25. It is enough for a disciple that he be like his teacher and a servant like his master. Second principle, first one, be surrendered to Jesus. Second one, be the same. Woo, the same as Jesus. Did you get that? Be the same. Oh, Manley, you're not telling us the truth. I didn't write this, and I didn't say it. Can't be the same as... I didn't write it. I didn't say it. Be the same as Jesus. Look at it. Verse 25. It is enough. Oh, that's one Greek word, by the way. It literally is the idea of sufficient. This is sufficient. I had 3 plates of meatloaf. It is sufficient. It is sufficient. Whew. Want another plate? No, thanks. Did you want some dessert? No. Whew. It was sufficient. I'm satisfied. I don't need anything else. I'm not looking for anything else. There's nothing you want. I don't need any additions to. This is the totality of it. It is sufficient. Well, what is sufficient for a disciple to be the same as his teacher? That's the whole deal. That I might be exactly like he is. That would be sufficient. That would be, whoa, I've arrived. That would be, this is the desire of my heart and my life. This is my passion. I can't stand it. If this doesn't happen, I don't need dessert. This is the 3 plates of meatloaf, man. This is the totality of this is the goal. This is the desire. This is the hunger. This is the one single thing in my life. If I could be like him. I've been told this all my life. Don't get upset. It's my goal to make heaven my home. What? That's your goal? Why, you self-centered, carnal, filled with yourself. Because that's a total focus on what? I can hardly wait for streets of gold. I can hardly wait when I get out of this mess. I can hardly wait for no more tears, no more pain, no more sorrow, no more. Wonder what is going to be there, because it's a lot of no mores. It's all about. Man, I'm going to have a big mansion. Streets of gold a foot thick. Big chandelier. Angels waiting on me. Lemonade, please. It's all about what? Right here, man. Right here. Right here. Isn't it interesting? Many of the great saints in our churches that I was raised in, that was their goal. He says that's not your goal. It is enough. The 3 plates of meatloaf that, this is enough, is what? Oh, I'm like him. You know what we call that? Holiness. I want his mind. I want his heart. I want to be like him. Oh, I want to think like he thinks. Oh, I want his reactions. I want his attitude. I want to be so tight with him that what drives him drives me. What burns in his bones, I want that to burn in my bones. What masters him, I want that to master him, to master me. What sources him, oh, if I could have what sources him, I want to be like him. It is enough for a disciple to be like his teacher. Now, like is really an interesting word. It's the Greek word ginomai. Means to become. So obviously there's progression in this. It's to become, but it also can be used as a state of being. I want to be like him. What do I have to do? Want to go down that road? I'm going to be like Jesus. What do I have to do? I'll give you a list. You start by giving me $50. Yeah, I can give you a list. But when you get my list done, there'll be somebody else who'll come along, give you one more list. And they'll add to the list and add to the list. In fact, I had a guy sitting in my living room and said, you're just fine. Everything's all right in your spiritual experience. After he examined me and talked to me for a while, he said, you just lack one thing. I said, oh, if I lack one thing, I want to do it. He said, you need to go. I'll take you right in the bathtub right now, right in your bathroom, and I'll baptize you in the name of Jesus only, and you'll have it. This is the only thing you lack. Well, when he got done and I was standing up all wet, I can guarantee you somebody else would have knocked on my door. So there's just one more thing. There's always one more thing. Somebody's always got one more thing. That isn't in the passage, folks. Because this is not about a doing thing. This is not about an activity thing. This is not, get this, get this, get this. My heart is, I want to be like him. I want to be like him. Well, what do I have to do? No, it's not what, see, that's an imitate. Oh, he has long hair. I'm growing my hair. And I never did figure that out, because in the days when you couldn't have long hair, I had long hair. And that wasn't proper, because everybody got upset in the church because you got long hair. And I'm trying to be like Jesus. What's the problem? I never did figure that out. Anyhow, I'm going to grow my hair. Oh, he's wearing a robe. I'm going to wear, oh, he had sandals. I'm going to wear sandals. I want to be like Nathan. I'm going to wear sandals. Oh, he doesn't have them on. Oh, Colorado changed him. Is that what this is all about? Jesus had a beard. I'm going to have a beard. He had blue eyes. I'll get blue contacts. See, is that what that? You know better than that. But wasn't, folks, come on, think. Wasn't that the whole WWJD thing? What would Jesus do? I want to be like Jesus. Well, in this situation, what would Jesus do? He wouldn't hit you? Well, I can't hit you then. I want to, but I'm not going to. That was the whole WWJD thing, wasn't it? Imitating Jesus. This is not about imitating him. I want to be like him. I want to be. Sure like to be with you guys. One of the stories I grew up with was a Hawthorne classic story. Classic story. If you haven't ever read it, you need to go. In fact, I went online, read it again. You can go on. It's called The Great Stone Face. It's this little village in the mountains. And this kid was born in this village. Very poor parents, and his name was Ernest. Ernest grew up, and the significant thing about their little village was in the middle of the mountains, right up there on the cliff of the mountain, on the side of the mountain, nature, Mother Nature, had just carved out this rock formation, and it looked like a face. And when he was old enough to understand, he was sitting with his mother on the front porch, and he looked up at that face and said, "Mother, what's the deal with that face?" And she tried to explain to him that a prophecy over their town was that someday there would come a great man who would have that face. Ernest determined, I'm going to see that man. As he was growing up, he studied that face. Instead of playing ball with the kids, he'd go out to the edge of town where he could see it perfectly, and he would study its features so he could get them in his mind, what that face looked like. Every time a stranger came in town, he looked at that stranger, studied his face. He looked at the great stone face, looked at the stranger's face, not him. Another one, not him. Every day, all day, he's looking at the face, studying the strangers, constantly. He's thinking about, he grew up with that. He's a teenager now, and he's never seen the man with the great face. Oh, he wants to see him so bad. He studies the face. He gets the details down. He's looked at it for hours. He looks at every stranger. Now he's in his 20s. Now he's gotten married. Now he's got kids of his own. He studied this. Oh, is it going to happen in my lifetime? I want to see this stranger come into town. I want to see the man who really has that face. He studied the face. He looks at the strangers. He's disappointed continually. Day after day, year after year after year. Here he is. Here he is. He's an old man now. He's retired. He's got great grandkids. He's hobbling with his cane. He's coming down the main street. Suddenly someone looks at him and says, "You've got the face." He had studied the great stone face for so long that he had become the man he looked like. You ever notice that old people, married old people, begin to look like each other? Well, they just hung around and looked at each other for so long, their faces just... I want to look like him. I want to be the same. Well, how am I going to be like he is? Oh, would you be a disciple? And would you hunger? And would you just stare at his face and just, well, what do you want me to do? Get involved. Go after him. Become intimate with him. Be filled with him. Another story I grew up with. There was this kid in town, very poor. Mother was sick. Father was an alcoholic, ran off. And he was just a junior age kid, and mother was sick and wasn't any money, and he had to take on the responsibility of raising the family. At a strong train station down in their town, this was years ago, strong train station, and he had worked at some jobs and got enough money to buy a supply of apples. And he'd take this great big cart full of apples down to the train station, and he'd sell them. End of the day, apples are all gone. He's accumulated enough money to buy another cart of apples and some profit. So he does that day after day after day. Some days are better than others, but he always have enough money to buy another supply of apples. One day he got all of his apples. Cart is full. He's going down to the train station. He's going up and down selling his apples. There's a stranger in a hurry. Didn't mean to. You know how it is. It's crowded. And he's rushing through, and his coat somehow caught the cart, flipped the cart. All the apples are, and the crowd is stomping on his apples, and his whole supply gone. He's in trouble. He's trying to gather up all the apples he can, as fast as he can, get them all together. And as he's gathering up all the apples that he can to save those apples, he looks out of the corner of his eye, and there's the stranger on his knees in his suit, gathering up apples as well. They save all they can, put them in the cart. The stranger reaches in his pocket and gives him twice what those apples would have cost and what he would have made that day. He said, "Son, I'm awful sorry." And the kid backed up, looked at the stranger and said, "Be you Jesus?" How long has it been since someone looked at you and said, "Are you Jesus?" No. Oh. Well, you look like him. No. You act like him. Oh. You have his attitude. I'm not Jesus. You must be awful close to him. You think like him. You have his mind. You be with his heart. Your expression on your face is like his. Your reactions are like his. And when you come to me and say, "Well, what do you want me to do to be like Jesus?" How do you do that? How do you knock over a cart and just... Where's the rule for that? That's an inside. Do you get this? That's an inside thing, isn't it? Burns. What? Could you get so close to Jesus that you're like him? And would that be like, oh, 3 plates of meatloaf? It's enough. Yeah, it's enough, man. I'm full. This is all I wanted. If I could just think like he thinks and stare at his face until I begin to look like him. That could happen to me. Oh, I'm going to just mention one more. Third principle. Be surrendered to Jesus. Be the same as Jesus. Be seen as Jesus. If they have called the master of the house Beelzebub, how much more will they call those of his household? If is not conditional. If is normally conditional. If you do this, I'll do that. Well, I'm not going to do this if you don't do that. It's conditional. This is not that kind of if. This would be better translated since. Since they did this, and again, isn't it interesting that he brings us back to persecution? Since they called the master of the house Beelzebub, since they persecuted the master of the house, what do you think they're going to do to you if the master of the house has been a sheep? Come on. It always intrigues me. The churches I grew up in, we'd sing, "Oh, to be like thee." But there wasn't a one of us that wanted to. Yeah, I'd like to have his power and go around and zap people. Man, I'd like to be able to multiply bread. I'd have a chain of restaurants across the countryside and be a millionaire overnight, man. Well, wasn't he like that? Oh, Jesus. Forgive me for all the times I've lied. Right in church, too. Sung that song. Sung that chorus. My desire to be like Jesus. My desire to be like him. But I didn't want you as bad as my lungs wanted air. I didn't stare at your face. I argued theology. I judged and criticized, which was the very opposite of you. Tonight in this service, could I genuinely, absolutely, 100%, could I become a disciple, and could you be my teacher? Could I genuinely believe, hang on every word, invoke your activity? Could I die to myself and all of my self-invoking? And could I live in the flow of constantly asking you to reveal, intervene, move in my life? Could I live in that? And could I seek you? Would it be enough? Could I hunger after you? Could I want you? Could you create? Oh, I just believe tonight. If I could see your face as it really is, I would be so hungry for you, nothing would satisfy but the fullness of your presence and for the indwelling of your spirit and for your very nature to literally flow within me. Could that happen to me tonight? Could everything else in my life be pushed aside? Could everything else become minor and insignificant and small? Could I kneel at your feet tonight? And would you do in me whatever you need to do to make me a disciple who's not above his teacher? Heads are bowed. Moments of response. Altars open. Not for light, not for superficial, not for feel-betterism. For a person who's had their head under the water until they gasp for breath. And now want to know him as bad as their lungs wanted air. And if you say, well, that's not me, would you be willing for him to make you like that? Would you be willing, would you kneel tonight and allow him to do something in you that would give you such a passion, such a hunger? Would you allow him to reveal himself? Would you allow him to literally capture you tonight? Would you get in the position where he could make you a disciple? Moments of seeking. Want to join me?